Watch this.
Relax, this is your safe place. Come and take solace. Here we build a better man. Pristine and so polished. Look at all the delusions we demolish. We found value everywhere, from the trades to the college. Strength without knowledge, brains without brawn. Like velvets with the builders every time the mic is on. Man, our confidence is swooning. We don't need an introduction. You know the sound. What you listening to? Menstruction.
Greetings and salutations. It is your beloved host and confidant, Black Velvet, and this is Menstruction, the place where you receive, build, decipher, and understand the beneficial bricks to fortify the structure that is you incorporated. I don't even want to waffle. I don't even have any precursors. I don't have anything that I want to explain or preface today. Actually, that's not true. Real quick, as you know, or if you don't know, now you will know, on YouTube, using the handle @beneficialbrick for all of the wonderful episodes of this show, or using the handle @blackvelvet, that is BLKVLVT. You can get all of the content that comes from your beloved host, Black Velvet. Get over there. Press that subscribe button. Now listen, this season I said that we're really practicing what we preach. For this season, I said we're taking all of the things that we talked about and established last season. We're putting them into play. We're implementing. We're now putting it on the road. We are going through the scientific method. We have come up with our hypothesis, and now it is time to test. But I don't really want to talk about that too much. What I really want to get into,
I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I'm annoyed.
Quite honestly, I'm tired of hearing and seeing and inquiring about the same nonsense. Tired of it. And I know I'm not the only one. I know that the frustration is large and it is wide, is experienced by many. This I know. What I don't know is why more people aren't willing to. Why can't we discuss these things freely? Why can't we talk about it? That's really what I want to know. So you may ask, Black Velvet, what are you talking about? I'm talking about what I've always focused on this platform, which is the struggles, the difficulties, the challenges that afflict young men. Yes, there are men across the board of all age ranges that have challenges. That's life. But that's not what we're talking about. There are some very unique and specific challenges that afflict those that are under the age of 30. And so now I'm at a point where I want to address these challenges because I've always asked myself, why? Shouts out to Jadakiss. And, you know, for a moment there, I really believed. I thought that we were moving in a direction. I thought that the progress was happening. Then more were discussing it openly. Starting to get the media buzz. The powers that be in the media space that control narratives, they're finally starting to address one of the biggest things, which is the social isolation. The loneliness epidemic. In me believing that coming to the zeitgeist, that being part of the news cycle, that we would also be able to get into and discuss some of the nuances. Because you have to discuss the nuances. How do we get here? I find that very few times are the real factors that go into that discussed. This is where my frustration has come from. Something that I constantly have an internal battle, an internal dilemma about, is the true extent of capitalism in this country. Follow me. Let's go on this tangent for a second. I don't know nearly enough about economic structure, about economic behaviors, about what true economies of scale really hinge on. I know a few things. I read up on a few things. I discuss the things I understand. There are people that understand it way more than I do. So I don't even want to go too much into that. Not today. But I address it because clearly capitalism is within the core of American society. It rules all, the almighty dollar. That's what everyone is moving towards. That's what the focus is. And as it was presented very recently when I heard it, it really made me think. The American way, as it has been since the inception of this great union, is to take anything that you can possibly imagine and monetize it. If it can be monetized, it will be monetized. Not to ask the question whether or not it should be monetized. Not to consider the ethical ramifications of that thing being monetized. Not to worry too much about who it afflicts unilaterally, but just to make sure that you get to that bag, right? Because we're paper chasers, right? Hustle mentality, richest country in the world, all defined by the dollar. But let's go here. We put money over our fellow man. We put money over our rights. We put money over our progress as people. And so we get to this point where we have so many divides. We have so many separations. The divide between a wealthy upper class and the working class. A divide between men and women. A divide between a left-leaning and or a right-leaning political perspective. I have made the argument, continue to make the argument, that the root of most of this division and polarization that we have right now is money. Specifically, socioeconomic status. Specifically, do you have the means economically to take care of your basic needs? Why am I bringing all this up? What does all of this have to do with my frustration? Follow me here. We now have reached a point where men are being unilaterally affected by these shifts, by the exploitation of cheap labor, by the exportation of jobs to other countries. The support of men economically now having many men feeling disillusioned and out of place in their structure, and so now feeling that they're unworthy, while at the same time seeing the women that they surround themselves with elevating themselves because now they also have certain freedoms and liberties. They have certain opportunities afforded to them, which is beautiful. It's fantastic. And yet you don't feel viable. You don't feel like you provide. You don't feel adequate. And so there's loneliness. There's division. There's isolation. There's polarization, which I would argue, as I've stated, comes from the economic disparities that exist. The disgusting part of it all, those very same economic forces, those same companies, those same corporations, those same transnational companies are taking the divides that they're creating and they're monetizing it. What am I talking about? The dating apps. I know everyone has discussed it. I'm not late to the party. I've just been trying to formulate my own perspective on it. But then when you really think about it on a simple level, let's just think about it like this. If you were to create an application, your main source of revenue is either going to be ad revenue or paid users on a subscription basis. In most cases, it's both. That means that you want somebody, your user, to remain on that application. Why do you want that? Because that means you have consistent revenue generating. If we take that same basic concept and apply it to the dating applications, that means the goal is to keep you there, not to leave. But if your personal end goal is to find success, to find a connection, to find love, to find a partner, to find a quick fuck, whatever it is for you, then that means you move away from the application because you have achieved your goal. But conversely, you have now worked against the goals of the company that created that application. So they want to keep you there. How do they do that? They put artificial barriers in the way. You want to meet people? Why don't you try this premium tier? You want to increase your visibility in your area? Why don't you pay for this boost? You want to make an A1 profile? Why don't you pay for this AI that we've developed that will build your profile for you? Or how about this? Simply creating enough barriers, creating a process, an algorithm that is literally designed to favor the female so that there is inherently an imbalance on the platform. There are more male participants than there are female participants, meaning just by the simple numbers game, you can't win. You can't succeed as a male. And that's just an example of the bigger overall concept of monetizing people's loneliness. Specifically in this case, young men. Monetizing disparity. It's frustrating. It's disgusting. It's despicable. Not just from a moral standpoint, because I understand at the very least that as the leader of a company, you have a fiduciary responsibility. What does that mean? Oversimplifying it, it means your objective is to make money. Those are the rules of the game. So I get it. But the frustration comes from having that understanding, but also having the understanding that you're doing that by exploiting very real issues and divisions that exist for the people you're generating money from. And then, as I said, if we take it a step further, you also have played a part in creating those divisions in the first place. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a self-propagated machine. So then you get to a point where, of course, you're going to be frustrated. Of course, you're going to have anxiety as a male. Speaking from the perspective of the males who were affected by this, who are being exploited and profited upon. So we really don't understand the anxiety. So we really don't understand the depression. So we really don't understand the despondents. We really don't understand the removing yourselves from the dating market, removing yourselves from leisure activities, removing yourself from sexual activity, removing yourself from reproduction. We don't understand. How do we really need to do that many fucking case studies to figure out how this happened? Do we really need to go that many steps away to understand how we got here? And while I appreciate these platforms that are bringing some light to it, I like to see the conversation and more people addressing it. I love that, especially people that are not just the people being affected by it. Absolutely. But it's still, forgive me, but it doesn't always seem to hit the right points. They seem to miss a lot. It seems to be a lot of think pieces about, well, how did we get here? And then it focuses on just an economic angle. Just a trend. Well, this happens with every generation. Does it? Sure, you could make the argument that upon each generation, there's always going to be some social and cultural changes that change sexual behavior, that change the interaction between the male type and the female type. Sure, that's true. But to say that there have been disparities as great as there are now is just not factual. And to say that there aren't a unique set of factors that are all conflated to make that the case is just irresponsible. And to see that these factors are set into play, and then to have the same corporations that helped create the division turn around and monetize the outcome, how do you not get fired up about that? How do you not get annoyed? And then let me bring it to myself for a second. How do I personally not get upset? Not just because I fall within the category of male that would be affected by all the things I just stated, but then trying to be a beacon of hope. You know how hard it is to look at people that are of my cohort and be like, no, we can get out of it. We can trudge through it. You just got to believe me and try to explain these things. Although we're all in the same walks of life, because I do truly believe we can and will get through it and come out on the other side better. But why would you believe me? Of all the factors that I just stated, which are all fact, They serve against that narrative. That just sounds like wishful thinking. It's very upsetting. And so I simply can't be satisfied with the coverage that I am seeing of it. I'm not seeing enough analysis. I'm seeing a couple points here and there that are addressing some of the things that I said. But to me, it's all of those things together. They're all factors. But the true root of that evil and what's continuing to propagate and push that shit forward is the need to monetize. You have to generate income. When you take your people, when you take your community, when you take your society and treat that as fiduciary, shit's gonna get scary. Because at that point, what you're doing is you're privatizing the gains and socializing the losses. So let's take a break. When we come back, I want to look at it from another angle, specifically in regards to humanity and the technology.
Hey, did you hear that Black Velvet guy has a channel now?
Yeah, totally. The Construction Media channel. Already subscribed.
Nah, man. He's got his own channel.
Yeah, I know. It's the Construction channel right there.
No, man. Black Velvet. He's got his own Black Velvet channel.
Oh, word?
Check out the Black Velvet channel. The handle is at BLKVLVT. Back to the show. See, there's this wonderful thing about us as human beings. We have this innate desire to understand the world around us. We have this amazing desire to look within, to be introspective, and to actually have some degree of understanding in consciousness of ourselves, the concept of me, the concept of I. We will always have a desire to be better, to do better, to create better. And that is at the core. And what is one of the main components needed to progress and develop any civilization? Technology. Technology is the key. Technology is the apparatus. It is the catalyst of progress in many, many ways. Now, technology means a lot of things. Most people think of technology now in a digital space. You think of the intangible a lot of the times. I mean, of course, there are the tangible things that come to mind. You think of toasters, you think of ovens, you think of electric toothbrushes, you think of smartphones. But even more so now, you think of some of the intangible things. You think about social media. Think about Wi-Fi, over-the-air updates, subscription services. That's also technology. One of the most fascinating things about how those things progress in tandem is in both cases, you're demonstrating evolution. They go hand in hand in the evolutionary process. Yet, in the grand scheme of the lifespan of mankind, technology has, in just about every sense, always outpaced the evolution of man. Because one of the main components of progressing technology is to create the ability to do more than what we as individuals can do. To create ease, to create convenience, to create production, to create efficiency. More so than what we are capable of as individuals. But a key part of evolution is adaptation. And adaptation comes from adversity. There has to be a challenge. There has to be something that's too great to overcome. That over time, that over generations, you naturally develop a skill, an ability, a physical attribute to overcome it. And then it becomes a part of the main structure. It becomes a part of mankind that we carry with us to continue to beat those odds. But then you have to think, depending on how far you can develop your technology, how efficient you can make it, how well you can get it to operate, at what point does it start to solve and or prevent those adversities that then facilitate the adaptation process for man? Now follow what I'm saying here, because I try not to go too far off in the weeds, but it's connected to this corporate economic exploitation. At what point does it stifle personal progress? Think about it. How many times have you heard in the last, couple of decades, that the advent of the internet, that the creation of social media and social platforms has hurt the ability of us as people being able to communicate, being able to connect in a very real sense, in a very personable way? Now, of course, with every development of technology, there will always be a counterculture. There will always be someone against it. There will always be dissenters who say, look at what this is doing to our society. So I acknowledge that. Just want to make sure that that concept is acknowledged. That has always been the case. It is no different now. And yet, in every one of those instances, we have moved forward as a society and we have gotten better. The past is always truly the worst. We're better because of it. But now, can't help but wonder, are we reaching a point where we're hitting that curve? Or are we hitting an inflection point where now perhaps the advancement of technology that we have now is going beyond what's actually pushing us forward? Is it actually starting to push backwards? Is there too much reliance on that convenience? Are we effectively now trying to outdo and recreate the adversities, the natural landscape provided to man? Are we now trying to play God? I don't have the answer to that question. Not even going down that rabbit hole, but we're fleshing it all the way out. Let's bring it back to the point. Is it now that we're seeing this exploitation and this seemingly apparent flippance and sometimes even dismissal of the true divide that's being created? Is that part of it? Or beyond that, let's go here, because here's the question I really want to ask. Are we really satisfied with having technology, artificial intelligence, that's meant to replicate and recreate the experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions of real mankind to fill in those gaps? Are we really ready for that? Are we really able to handle it, is the question. Because I see time and time again, we all can see it, the true adverse effect of the connection. The example I think of all the time is you have all of these people who share, who speak openly about so many different amazing concepts, and they're really thinking, but then they spout nonsense. They repeat talking points, or they ask questions that are answerable with available information. And I asked myself, how could you be this uninformed? You have the most access to information that we've ever had, but does that mean we can actually use it? Do we have the capacity to really take in and process that much information? Because there's a point where we don't have that capacity. We're not there. We have in many ways progressed to the greatest points that mankind has ever been at. However, technology has many, many times outpaced that. And so us trying to coexist and commingle with that timeline doesn't work. We created social media. Think about what it's called, social media. Seemingly one of the greatest inventions. You effectively render the challenge of geographical distance irrelevant. The fact that you can see someone in real time and hear their voice in real time from any point on the globe via a digital internet connection that you can't see and don't even really understand how it's transmitted with little to no latency. Something that people who were alive 100 years ago or less could only begin to imagine. Seem like witchcraft if you were to bring it up. We're living that reality now. And yet, what seems to be the outcome? People are drawing back. They're isolating. They're disconnecting. They're turning against each other. They're creating echo chambers of hate. But we're supposed to be connected. We're supposed to be social. Something you have heard me say on this platform many times, you will continue to hear me say, the socially engineered alternate reality. That's a part of it. Again, bringing it back to the point I made before, the exploitation of those that are in the business of making the most money, of maximizing their profits, who are fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities. Don't we have to think that that's a problem? That people who are actually driving how these things work, is that really how it's supposed to go? By giving you the opportunity to create an algorithm to see the things that it has deemed you want to see, not that you have said you want to see. And I know that sometimes when you get off into these spaces and you really attack these things from this angle, it begins to sound conspiratorial, but it's not. You have to think about the power of influence. You have to think about the quote unquote titans of industry. You have to think about the true leaders of certain changes and shifts. It's very much so cone shaped. Think of it as the shape of a pyramid. The closer you go to the top, the narrower it is. There are less and less players controlling these things. But we are under the impression that the technology that we have in front of us is to our convenience. Perhaps it is way beyond what we can comprehend. We're still in the phase of trying to understand certain things about ourselves. We still don't completely understand the science of an itch that you feel on your skin, on the back of your scalp, in between your crusty ass toes. We're still trying to figure that out. We still haven't found a definitive cure for cancer. On a more conceptual level, we're still trying to understand the science of love. What does it really mean to be angry? What does it really mean to be disgusted? Is disgust one of the most human emotions? But let me not get off in the weeds. Again, refocusing. What does it say about us as people using this tech, being caught in this endless feedback loop that we have created and now are exploiting the people who are stuck in it and being damaged by it. What does that say about us? Are we really that evolved? Are we really that developed? What is to be said? You can't help but be annoyed. You can't help but be frustrated. You can't help but feel like it's not real. And when I say it, I mean your day-to-day reality. You can't help but feel that some of the things that are being said to you have an agenda, are being served to you for a greater purpose, and not a better, greater purpose, for a selfish, greater purpose, specifically for dollars and cents. Is that unfair to say? Beyond that, is it unreasonable then to be constantly in a state of despondence, to be in a state of anger, to be in a state of confusion? Is that really so far-fetched? Is it really that confusing as to how we got where we are? Why people feel the way they do? Why Community is better known as a canceled TV show than an actual tangible concept? Let's take another break.
400 something years what it took. The most beautiful brown on every screen that I
Did you know that your host makes music? That's right. Black Velvet has taken his vocal and articulation talents and put it on vinyl.
With my afflictions, go snap your fingers if you fit the description. Yo, yesterday tried me, good luck is untimely. I'm the man I need to be today. So take a breath and say finally. Valentine, trying to
You can find his latest release, Hard Drive Hits, on all your favorite streaming platforms. Just search Black Velvet Hard Drive Hits. Let's get you back to that show.
Now, I want to direct this final line of thought really at the men, the young men. I really, really want this to come through clearly. I have addressed, we have discussed on this platform numerous times, the effects, the influence, the inception of the red spillers of the manospherian space. And I know many others have as well, especially now that the movement seems to be crumbling and imploding in on itself. And I'm not here to beat that dead horse. I don't care. I didn't care to see it when it existed. I don't care to see where it heads next. But I felt it necessary to address, and I still do, for these reasons. As I said then, and I will repeat again, the figures within that movement have never had your best interests at heart. They didn't care to better you. They didn't care to benefit your way of life. They didn't care to improve and pass on lessons and oracles from a generation of before. That wasn't their intention. Their intention was to sow discord. Their intention was to develop a narrative. Their intention was to express hate, contempt for those that they felt wronged them the most. To an extent, I have said before, it's understandable why some of them feel the way they do, given how the system has also worked against them and beat them down. For a lot of the same reasons I have addressed today and in previous episodes. I've granted them that. But also now, as we watch as it continues to implode and crumble, you can see the true character of the people in that movement, and moreover, what their actual goals were, what the end game was for them. And simply put, all it was controlling a narrative, forcing conformity, providing distractions and confusion. I've stated it here before. We discussed it in regards to how things are presented on Black History Month. We talked about it in the industries, commoditizing culture, commoditizing black bodies and black souls, commoditizing love, commoditizing familiar relationships, all to develop a narrative to get you to conform, to get you to be a consumer, to benefit their bottom line. That isn't fair to you. That isn't fair to us. We didn't ask to be a part of their social experiment. We didn't ask to be unwilling pawns in their game. And yet, we found ourselves smack dab in the middle of a transition to cash out on all. So I bring it up again to point at yet another example of how the industries, the companies, the corporate agendas socially engineer a way of life to make you believe that that's what you're supposed to do. To make you believe that the way you live is wrong. To make you believe that your individual idiosyncrasies are wrong, are awful, are unmanly. All of that red pill bullshit, all of that manospherean bullshit, men going their own way, fraudulent. All to create and engineer some version of masculinity, to take masculinity and trivialize it, to make it into a hot word instead of its own interpretation of the presentation of a man. They did that to where a lot of you, a lot of us question ourselves. Are you man enough? Do you do enough? Do you qualify? Are you adequate? Questions that most time don't even matter because they're not real. You should be upset. Let me validate you. Again, you should be upset. You should be confused. You should be annoyed. You should be irritated. But let me clarify. You should be irritated. You should be annoyed at those that found us to be most manipulative. Manipulatable. Most vulnerable. Because not only did they insult our intelligence as a collective, but they fleeced our pockets. And they did it on a psychological level. You should feel a certain way about it. So I get it. I understand. I live it just as you do. But I wanted to be clear and understood that that socially engineered narrative, what the corporations like to hype up, what the platforms like to push, what the manosphere claim to say, the scapegoat enemy, it's not the woman. They got fleeced too. They were lied to as well. That's not your enemy. So if you're going to train your sights on something, at least focus on the right enemy. I personally suggest that you focus your energy inward and figure out how you ended up in a space that allowed you to get manipulated that way in the first place, and what you can learn from it and how you can develop to become better from it. But if you want to fight back, I get that too. I'm here for that. I'm on that. Understand that. Let me add this point too. A lot of those men in that space, those influencers, they had true disdain for women. They had true disdain for certain types of men. Why? For selfish reasons as well. Because a lot of them had their own demons that they were fighting. A lot of them closeted individuals. Closeted in many ways. Not just talking about hiding homosexuality, but talking about hiding your desire to be in black spaces. Hiding your desire to be moving and maneuvering within these corporate spaces. Hiding your desire to be politically advantaged. All the same vulnerabilities that they saw in us and exploited, they also felt. Think about that. Think about if those are the people you really want to follow and you want establishing your path forward, establishing the structures for you. Think about that. So I hate to take such a somber tone so early on in the season, but that's what we do. We have to address all of these things because we're here for the benefit of you, for the development of the structure that is you, to be that walking case study of success. This has been another episode of Menstruction, and this is the place, the home of the beneficial brick, where we fortify the structure that is you, incorporated the men, where the men of today build, develop, and fortify the structures for the men of tomorrow. I do truly love, respect, appreciate, and cherish each and every one of you.